course of the EBN's activities are highly educated, highly talented, capable people who care deeply and passionately about the environment. One of their, if I could say as an overall gripe, is that sometimes they feel they're not listened to at board level, and that sometimes they are seen to be kind of metaphorically in the basement, where and called out on compliance and regulation related issues. Yet, we're arguing they should be front and centre, and I hear those arguments. I play devil's advocate to a few of them and say it's a two-way street. And my argument back to them is that if they want to be heard and listened to at board level, they have to speak business language. They've got to relate ESG and environmental issues back to what the issues, the challenges that keep the FD and the CEO awake at night. And it has to be a two-way street. We've discussed a lot of things, like, for example, if I threw this out to people out there, how many people really could understand the three core financial statements of balance sheet, profit and loss, and cash flow. I'm not suggesting that people need to become accountants, but a wider business understanding is very, very important, and we've touched on this. But what we're going to do through the EBN working with Imparta is deliver some top line training and guidance and advice on some areas around business. So that's our sales plug, by the way, everybody. So join the EBN and you'll find out more. But Alex, tell everybody out there what around influence, why? Because that's what we think is the most important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, we do. And I think going back to that piece about how do you get to that board level? How do you have those conversations? And I mentioned earlier, I think in my introduction, about how you bring your value proposition to life, because the circular economy, ESG, you as yourselves as well, you have a value proposition. But how do you get that? How do you have that board influence to get them to see that, yes, what you do adds value and it's important to us? And going back to something Roger said earlier, therefore they don't go externally necessarily to get the support, they look internally for it. So we've done a lot of research and a lot of work over the last 25 years within Imparta, certainly, about how you can bring that to life. And there's three key dimensions that we focus on very much. So first one of those is insights. And when we talk about insights, it's how do you create value through disruptive insights? So there will be a number of insights that will come out of certainly this week from some of the webinars you've been attending. So through the circular economy, also through ESG, there will be huge amounts of insights that you can bring, whether it's internally into your own organization, or if you're working externally with external customers, that you can take to them. And when I talk about insights, they're ones that disrupt people's thinking. So they disrupt their thinking about the needs that they have. So you make them think differently about what's important and what they need to do. You make them think differently about the solutions as well. So perhaps they thought, well, we'll go down this path and we're going to use this to overcome that, and we'll focus very much perhaps around the health and safety, and we'll show that we're doing that, the environmental and corporate social responsibility, but they haven't thought about the environmental side as a solution potentially as well. So you think the insights help them think differently about solutions. And the other key insight that you can bring to disrupt their thinking is very much around decision-making criteria. So more and more now we're seeing things like tenders that are coming out to businesses where environmental issues and things like carbon emissions and so on are part of tenders that people are sending out. And not only are they now part of tenders and people are looking for what do you do about this, but they're also adding more weighting to those particular criteria as well. So that's the first key dimension that we focus on, is what insights can you bring that disrupt people's thinking around the needs that they've actually got, the solutions that they were looking at and that they may need, and also their decision-making criteria. But insights on their own won't just do that, won't influence, won't get you to that board level and having the conversations that you need to have. So the second key dimension is actually influence. And when we talk about influence, we talk about two key parts. There's the first part, which is, sounds very fancy. We talk about behavioral economics, but essentially what that is influencing techniques. So a couple of examples would be, you've probably all heard, I'm sure, about what's in it for me and benefit statements. But actually one of the key things, and a lot of research shows this now, that people are 4 times more likely to be influenced by loss aversion. So actually if you position through the art of questioning, which is one of the key skill sets with influencing, through the right questions, if you get people to see that there's a pain from not doing something, not responding to environmental issues and some of the circular economy piece as well, there's an actual pain to it. That's 4 times more likely to influence people. If you then build on that, some of the benefit side, and you then turn the questions to gain questions and what people could gain by actually instilling some of these measures, putting some of these practices in place. What you've then done in order to influence them is you've not only have you created a perception of a value gap because of what they're not going to have, so the loss aversion, you've created this contrast bias where you've actually got them thinking about what the future could look like and what the impact would be if they did do something. So the perceived value gap is far greater. So that's the first part of influence. It's about the ability to ask the right questions and help people see and find their own pain from not acting, but also the gain and benefit of acting to create that value gap. And the second key part of influence is actually, I've mentioned decision-making criteria earlier, but it's actually influencing the decision-making strategy. So this is how you get close to your key stakeholders. So whether it's internally within your organization or with your external customers, how do you manage your stakeholder relationships? And we focus very much on alignment of the stakeholders to your value proposition. How much do they like what you're talking about? How much are they interested in it? But also their ability to influence internally within their organization, other decision makers. And we focus on key strategies about how you can actually manage those stakeholders to create that alignment, but also to be influenced with people that you want to, who are supporting what you're talking about. So that's 2 of the dimensions. So we have insights, you've made them think differently, and you've also got the ability to influence them as well and start them seeing that there is definitely a need to do this and we must do something about that. But those 2 on their own aren't everything, because the danger is there. All you've become is what we would call a self-oriented disruptor, because what we then tend to see is people then get very excited and want to talk about what they can do and how brilliant, how brilliant the circular economy is. Here are some brilliant guidelines and things we can do around the environmental side that will really help push us forward. And then it starts to sound very much about your agenda. And so the third dimension that we focus on is that of trust. There's a book written by David Meister. So if you've during lockdown, if you want to pick up a book or load it onto your Kindle, called The Trusted Advisor, and he talks very much in his formula of trust, talks about 4 key things: credibility, reliability, business intimacy, and customer centricity. And it's the last 2 that I would focus on in particular if we think about board level and C-suite people. So business intimacy, when we talk about business intimacy, is how well do you know, whether internally your own organization, so how well do you know what's important to the sales function and commercial team? How well and how much do you know about what's important to your financial teams, marketing teams? How well and how important do you know what's important to your board level as well, and your chief execs, the chief financial officers, the chief sales director, those roles, what's important to them? So business intimacy is about understanding the breadth of your organization, or even if you're working externally, the breadth of your customer's organization. All of those functions: marketing, finance, procurement, sales, as I've mentioned. If you think of a large construction company, probably even their construction teams as well. So you have the breadth of knowledge, that's a level of business intimacy, but then it's how deep can you go? How much do you actually know about each of those functions and divisions? So as well as when we look at what's important, and we focus on 3 key areas: what are their key performance indicators? What are they measured against? What are their key objectives that they're trying to achieve? So typically sales might be something around achieve 3% margins on all builds, 5% growth. Finance, we always know, are looking to save money left, right and center. So theirs will be about how can we cut costs by 3%. Procurement are probably looking at supply chains and how they can reduce supply chains. HR, Rouse team will be focused on perhaps turnover rates and have target levels around turnover rates. So they'll have their key objectives. They'll also have challenges they're facing. So that's an extra level of depth. What are the key challenges they're facing? So if we took a construction team, within an organization, they might have challenges around meeting, they've got a challenge regularly about passing environmental audits on sites and that sort of thing. So that's a regular challenge for them. Sales are facing challenges regularly from their competition and what their competition are doing when they're up in tender situations. Marketing will probably have challenges and also goals around net promoter scores and customer satisfaction levels. And then finally, the other area that we focus on is thinking about the wider goals of each of those teams and functions within the business. So what are their goals within the next 12, 18, 24 months? So maybe there will be a goal within something like a construction team about using 50% of recycling 50% of waste materials on site, for instance. So those sorts of initiatives. And at the same level, each of those functions will have objectives they're working to, challenges they're facing, wider goals. So will the board. So again, from a board level thinking, but this is a far more strategic thinking, is what are their objectives strategically wise? They will definitely involve growth, how they're looking to grow the business, grow market share, provide shareholders with investment and so on. They'll have some key strategic objectives they're trying to achieve. They will face challenges at a strategic level as well. So it's really trying to understand what those are. So once you have that business intimacy, you are then in a position to think about, right, where can we as environmental practitioners, whether it's internally within our own organization or externally with our customers, where can we actually add value across that, what we call a value chain, that breadth of the organization and the depth of the objectives, goals and challenges they're working towards. And it's, so then it becomes then you become a far more important member, an important potentially advisor, but people can see your value proposition because you can help the sales team grow. You can also potentially help the finance team cut costs, and you can help the marketing team improve customer satisfaction. And that makes you a massively important member of the team, whether it's internally or externally. But the key then is that you stay very much focused on their agenda. So the final thing in David Meyerson's trust equation is customer centricity. So suspending your own agenda. So not talking necessarily about you and what you and everything that you have to offer. It's being very much focused on how you can help and support them achieving their goals, overcoming their challenges, and helping them deliver the longer term goals that they're aiming to do as well. And with those three dimensions of insight, influence, and trust, you will be able to put yourself then at that board level table, having those conversations, because people will see you adding value at a strategic level, potentially what we would call a tactical level. So you might be helping with efficiencies and effectiveness, and you're also adding value at a personal level. You're helping individuals in their roles, you're helping reputations of teams because they will be doing far better against their targets, and that will be seen by the business. So there's different levels of value you can add across the business around strategic, tactical and personal as well. And that's what we focus on with regards to that skill development piece. How do you bring all those three dimensions to life when you're having conversations either within your business or with your customers' businesses?